Anne Johnson, who so generously sewed my beautiful rakusu, said that entrustment, lay teacher entrustment, must be a wonderful gift and an awesome responsibility. And at just 70, one of the explorations for me has been what it is to be entrusted as an older person. And during September, I spent much of the month in Cornwall on the west coast of England, surrounded by the vast Atlantic Ocean, which reaches out across the sea to where most of you are today in the United States for thousands and thousands of miles. And I've returned sea washed and smoothed and soothed by that experience. And what I immersed myself in was the play between the sea and the land, the back and forth that went on constantly. And the way that the sea leaves these beautiful, luminous rock pools when it recedes, and then it comes back in and it washes them and it replenishes them and it flows out again. This constant flow of the universal and the particular, big mind and small mind, and the vast and the specific. And I had a question: are we rock pool or ocean? Are we both? What are we? And in these rock pools, in these individual rock pools, there is so much beauty and life and development and vitality to explore and to see. And we each have this life, this rock pool, which is constantly being replenished by the vastness of emptiness. I also took with me Dogen's commentaries on time being, called Uji. And with the sea and the environment that I was in, his writings really started to soften my sense of linear time, my sense of being older, and my place in this linear time of life. Dogen said, "The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time." If you could see yourself with your rock pool in this entire world as a moment of time right now, what would it open up for you? I also took with me T.S. Eliot's poem, The Four Quartets, which I've lived with for many, many years. And the fragment that spoke to me during this time was from the section East Coker. And I'm going to read one section first. He says, "Home is where we start from. As we grow older, the world becomes stranger, the pattern more complicated of dead and living. Not the intense moment isolated, with no before and after, but a lifetime burning in every moment. And not the lifetime of one man only, and not the lifetime of one woman only, but of old stones that cannot be deciphered. And while I was reading that and learning it, I was thinking about my life in this rock pool and all the stones and all the presence and all the beings in it, which really cannot be understood by this individual, but perhaps can be realized through a lifetime of practice. Old stones that cannot be deciphered. One of the other things that accompanied me on my time in Cornwall, and I've thought about this koan a lot. It's a famous koan which relates to the transmission from our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, to his successor, Mahakashyapa. And in it, in the koan, the Buddha is at a big gathering and he holds up a flower. And the story goes that nobody responded to it apart from Mahakashyapa, who smiled. And in some commentaries, it says he chuckled a little. And seeing this response, the translation I have of it, the Buddha said, "I have the treasury of the true Dharma eye and the wonderful heart mind of Nirvana, the formless true form, the subtle Dharma gate, not established by written words, transmitted separately outside the teachings, and I transmit and entrust it to Mahakashyapa." I think about this a lot because I think one of the ways I've practiced in recent years is very much to watch and experience the totality as much as I can of what happens when Flint is teaching. I think of in Switzerland when we had many retreats there in the beautiful Alps. I was so touched by the totality of the experience, the relationship between Flint and Sophie, who translated his teaching so beautifully, the intimacy between them, the trees behind the big panes of glass, the birds that would land on the trees, the light coming in from the sun and how it moved through the room, the creaking of the floor as we walk round and round, the cowbells that are so resonant in that part of the world. And because we're up so high, the words of children you can hear from a long way away. The wonder of the totality of that. And I wonder what it is that Mahakashyapa received. What did he realize? Trying to make the story something for me inside. I was struck when Norman Fisher was giving a talk called No Teachers of Zen, and he had been offered to be ordained by his teacher, and he said, well, he must know what he's doing. And I find it really helpful to try to make these old stories something that I can really relate to and move with inside. Flint has sometimes said that learning this practice is like a bird, a baby bird learning to fly. So it's watching and attending and wondering and being with. And rather like a child, if the child was in Switzerland and watching this whole thing, they would be taking in the wonder of the totality of that, and the whatever that transmission and that entrustment is. Mizumi Roshi said, "What is the treasury of the true Dharma I and the wonderful heart-mind of Nirvana?" Which is what Flint has been talking about in these last 2 evenings. What is it that Shakyamuni Buddha transmitted? He said, all the teachings deal with this most precious treasure. It is your life. It is my life. And I feel that this entrustment that Suzanne and I have been so generously offered is actually an expression of the great entrustment of life, the entrustment that we're all invited to accept this life with these people at this time. Suzuki Roshi wrote once about the moon landing in 1969. I don't think he was very impressed with it. So he wrote a piece called Enjoy Your Life, which was about actually enjoying your life in this place, in deepening your life and your practice and your relationship with yourself and all beings. And he went to an island in the United States run by the Nature Conservancy organization. And he said, yesterday I went to an island owned by the Nature Conservancy where there are many kinds of animals, birds and fish. It was a very interesting place. If you live in an area like that and really start to see things, to see the plants and animals in that area, you may want to stay there your whole life. And when I hear that, I want to just move it a little bit differently and say that if you really turn towards yourself and all that exists in you, you may want to commit to being there your entire life. And perhaps one of the big strands of our practice is actually saying, yes, I will entrust myself to myself, and actually go deeper. I will be on this beautiful island, as Suzuki Roshi was, and really commit myself to that entrustment. There are wonderful things that happen every day if we had but ears and eyes to listen to them. And while I was sitting just now, we have a little bird feeder outside the window here, and a blackbird comes and sits inside it, and eats dried worms. And I could hear a mum saying, there's the bird, and say goodbye to the bird. It's so easy to miss each thing as it presents itself to us. And on the 7th of September this year, from under one of the stones in my rock pool, I read this extraordinary article in The Guardian. And it's really stayed with me, and it is my teaching from September and beyond. And it's by a young man called Elliot Dallon. And the title was, at 31, I have just weeks to live. Here's what I want to pass on. Now that there's no longer any way to treat my cancer, I've been reflecting on what I want others to know about life and death. It would be so easy to miss that while scrolling for what you think the main news is. So he listed the things he wanted people to know before he died. And here are his vows. The importance of gratitude. I found comfort in remembering what I have. An amazing family, the friends and times I've shared with them, the privilege of the life I've had. The second one, which particularly struck me as I'm really curious about time and being an older trustee, a life, if lived well, is long enough. A life, if lived well, is long enough. I can confirm that the world is a wonderful place, full of moments of awe and amazement. Soak up as much as you can. 3, it's important to let yourself be vulnerable and connect to others. Having allowed myself to be vulnerable and accept help has given me the best 2 years of my life. 4, do something for others. Against the backdrop of COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, and the desperate attempts of migrants to cross the English Channel, my thoughts really turn to those who have not had my privilege. 5, protect the planet. I can't leave this off because it's so important. I'll be gone soon. But humanity will still be faced with this huge challenge. In my time here, I've been lucky enough to see some natural wonders and understand how precious they are. He concluded, I really struggled to define a purpose for my own life. Don't we all? I found in time this came naturally. Life is for enjoyment. Make of it what you can. For me, that is an expression of total entrustment brought about by a situation where this brave young man was facing the great matter. And Flint has said that at the end of our life, the big questions are, did I love well? And was I loved? Did I love well? Was I loved? That's all in his article. Katagiri Roshi talked about, in one of his talks, about life being in total combustion with nothing left over. And that is the orientation of our practice, to burn it completely so there is nothing left apart from this clarity, apart from this essential question. And Karen Mason Miller says in her beautiful book, Paradise in Plain Sight, she says, the future of all living things comes down to what you will do while you are here. The future of all living things comes down to what you will do while you are here. So I want to thank Elliot for that. And at the bottom of the article, which appeared on the 7th of September, when he said, I have just weeks to live, he died that day. That was his gift. The other part of East Coker, T.S. Eliot's East Coker, which accompanied me during my time in September when I was preparing for entrustment and questioning and thinking, what is this? I learned the following, the end of East Coker. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. Old men ought to be explorers. Old men ought to be explorers. Old women ought to be explorers. Here and now does not matter. We must be still and still moving into another intensity for a further union, a deeper communion through the dark cold and the empty desolation, the wave cry, the wind cry, the vast waters of the petrel and the porpoise. In my end is my beginning. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. We must be still and still moving, a lifetime burning in every moment. I have been entrusted with so many things in my life from so many beautiful people. And I want to thank all of those people going back decades and decades. And I want to thank my teacher, Flint, for offering me this entrustment so that actually I can support others and walk alongside you, warm hand in warm hand, and also entrust myself to myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh, for that beautiful, beautiful talk. I believe we have decided that we would offer a Q&A, a question and answer session here following your talk, if that's agreeable with you.
Yes, very much so.
And so if members of the community, if you have questions arise, please raise your hand. Take a moment to reflect and we can invite you in.
Hello, Darcy.
Hello, Darcy.
Hi, Josh.
Hi.
Hi.
It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Meet you too.
Thank you very much for all your wonderful words. I feel like I'm kind of swimming in them and not completely understanding, which is okay with me. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what this means. Love is most nearly itself when here and now cease to matter. I feel a little stuck with a way to go deeper and experience that.
Yeah, I'm I realize I'm
I
echoing.
realize I'm
Excuse me, Darcy, when you came on, we started getting some feedback from Josh, so I'm going to send you back as an attendee and see if that resolves the problem. Is that all right? Excuse me.
I'll see you in a moment, Darcy.
All right. Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to let you answer without her
Oh,
present.
okay, okay. Darcy, you know, I've been with the four quartets since I was in my early 20s. And each time I come back to it, I feel a different resonance with the verses in the same way that I do when I read Dogen. I don't know that I can explain the verse, but I know that when I hear it, something shifts inside me. And I think the closest that I can come to it is when Flint talked about intimacy, the meeting of the total meeting between us. And it's a feeling I sometimes get when a space opens up and I'm not self-aware, I'm not self-conscious in the way I meet an experience. So a bigger space opens up to experience it. And actually hearing those words support a bigger space to open up. But I'm hearing those words, but they go beyond, the experience goes beyond words. Are you there?
Darcy is using an older version of Zoom, and so there are problems
Okay,
communicating with her, but I think she got to hear you.
good. Thank you, Darcy. Good to meet you briefly.
Okay, Suzanne, you're on.
Yes.
I'm not echoing now.
Are you echoing now, Josh?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, good. We're gonna, there we go, got some light. Josh, I'm in awe. On a number of levels. The flow of what you said felt to me like the ocean, coming in and going out. Coming into the tide pool and then receding and leaving something behind. That image of the ocean and the tide pool, I often play with the image of the ocean. And here, living on lakes, we don't really have tide pools, but we have little gatherings of weed, sort of thing. But you asked the question, are we the ocean or are we the tide pool? And of course the answer is yes. And at least, from Dogen and the Buddha, and that's part of the mystery of it all. Is it reminded me of that experience I have in my morning walking meditation where the sun captured the tops of the trees. And there was this moment of awe for me. And then it passed because the sun kept rising and then it kept shining on the whole of everything. But that moment of brightness from the sun connected to something in me that's there, as I imagine your time with the ocean and the tide pools did for you. Could you say a bit more about that experience for you? The ocean and the tide pools?
I think it was, I felt very fortunate to be there for 3 weeks. And so we were very close to the sea. And so the sound of it and the colors and the different moods of it, I did feel sea washed and smoothed. And somehow my breathing changed, rather like, in time with the waves. So I could sense this vastness, particularly when I was swimming in it, how small I was in this vast ocean, stretching out across to the United States. And then the particularity of my own thoughts and my own rock pool. And I'm reminded about Suzuki Roshi. He said, we live a lot of the time in small mind. This is us. We have our individual being, but we're held all the time in the bigger framework of big mind, even though we don't know it. And there was something about being by the sea that reminded me that all the time we're held in this vastness. And it kind of refreshes our rock pools all the time. And in the rock pool are all the stones that we have and the creatures, some who will live only a very short time, some who will live a long time, some will disappear into the vastness at the next tide. So it's helped me deepen my questions, I think. But I don't know who said it, but it may have been Flynn, but that practice kind of comes in the back door while we're looking at the front door. It's a little bit like that. I don't know quite what has arrived, but something has shifted and moved while I'm thinking that I'm concentrating on something important. It's like sometimes, we listen to a talk and we're taking something in and we're focusing on it, and something else is going on, some big activity is going on that is refreshing us.
Everything you said, I want to say, me too, and yet it's beyond words. But the experience of walking meditation yesterday morning in the woods and fields of one of our members' farm here, and every once in a while I stop and I'd read a section of the Song of the Jewel Samadhi. And for me, it was that same experience. I can't speak for the others, but it was that experience of being held. And we were among trees and field and grasses, and it was that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that description you have of the sunlight on the trees. You know, it's so vivid for me, and knowing that you're all walking in the woods and having that activity while we're here. You know, while this is going on, really touching.
So thank you so much, Josh. And especially thank you for reading the piece from the young man at the end. Yes, at the end of his life and at the end of your talk.
Yeah, so much gratitude to him.
So much gratitude to him. Yes.
Tearful thanks to him for his courage and generosity.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
I'll come back on at the end just to talk for a moment about our walking meditation this morning. Okay.
Lovely.
Right, great.
Good morning,
Hi,
Josh.
Kim.
Hi.
It's good to see you again.
Oh, it's good to see you too. It was such a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. And I have a question. So I was caught by a number of things, and I'm somebody who, feels very deeply sort of my responsibility within the tide pool, right? To attend to myself, like I love to entrust myself to myself, to attend to others. And I can sometimes see the ocean, sometimes, and it's part of my vow actually to remember.
Yeah.
But when you read the piece from the young man who is dying, and his last point being that the purpose of life is to enjoy oneself, I felt a deep, really? Behind that. And I think I can add a heaviness sometimes to my vow. And so I wonder if you can speak a little bit towards what you're learning or have learned about joy in practice, and how that can be an expression of this love that you and Darcy were trying to touch. And I guess that's
it's a great question, Kim. How to support joy in our lives, and particularly at difficult times in our lives and difficult times in our society. When I was reading Eliot's piece, I was aware he was a young man who had travelled a lot and had a very active life, and it was helpful to have that, to enjoy your life. There's a chapter that Suzuki Roshi wrote in Not Always So, called Enjoy Your Life. I think for me it's something about noticing each small thing as it arises, if it's possible to do that. So, for example, the mother and the little girl, I think she was a little girl, I was sitting this morning, I could hear their voices, rising and falling, and they talked about the bird, so I assumed a bird was there eating some worms. And that kind of touched my heart. So sometimes I think it's a little bit like our day is a little bit like a necklace with beads on. So that can be one of the beads from my day. That little hearing, didn't see them, hearing those lovely voices, imagining the bird. And it was over in a few seconds. Particularly this time when I go into stores, there's always somebody there kind of seeing whether it's okay for you to go in, and then there's hand sanitizer. But most people are just so kind as they welcome you in. It's a moment just to take some time with them and say thank you. Appreciate them, enjoy them as you briefly walk past them into the next bit. So it's like the little, begin really small, with each little bead on your necklace. And then you can actually build up a nice set of jewels for your day. And then you start the next day. It's like, what can I, Steve Stocky, who was abbot of San Francisco Zen Center, when he was dying, he said, each morning I wake up and I say gratitude, and then I see all the things that I'm grateful for. And right now for me, I'm just grateful for seeing you here with your soft openness to the possibilities of joy. That brings joy to me right now.
Me too. Yeah, that's really helpful, because I do have quite a necklace. I do know that. I can feel joy, but I think I was having this sense that somehow the whole thing should be contained within that. And in a certain way, I suppose it is. But the moments, I can feel, I can touch those. I can touch the moments.
I think sometimes when we hear a talk and there's something that really strikes us, the risk is we kind of make it into a project that becomes a bit burdensome. And how can we be playful with the idea of enjoy your life? Because if we make it into a project, we won't enjoy it.
Right.
So it's kind of, what would the little next step be for me to enjoy my life?
Yeah.
Suzuki Roshi used to say so often, the most important thing is, and I then give my attention, and he says, this is the most important thing in Zen. And then a few pages later, he says something completely different. The most important point is. So at that point where he says it is the most important thing right now, because that's up. But later this afternoon, it might be something else.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
It's like holding it in the bigger sea rather than the smallness of something. How can you relate to it expansively?
Yeah, it makes me think, when that little one moment of joy of hearing the little girl ask her mom, or attending to the store clerk and feeling that connection, if that enters the ocean, then the whole thing is actually held within that.
Yeah.
And that's really beautiful. So,
Yeah.
thank you. What you said, it's another Suzuki Roshi quote, but it's one that sits with me, and it it's another kind of grand statement, but all I want for my students is for them to hear the bird song.
Yeah.
And Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll continue to think and not make a project out of joy.
Yeah, and also not make a project out of not making a project.
And on we go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for adding to my necklace, Josh.
Thank you for adding to mine. Great to see you, Kim.
Yes.
Hello, Kathy.
Josh, good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
sitting here thinking no project. That's,
Yeah.
but I want to thank you for your talk. It was perfect for me. I've been struggling with time for probably my whole life. I always say I run late, and so I wanted to study that. And our little book group is reading "Every Moment Is the Universe."
Hmm.
And so and we just met yesterday in the intercession, and so your talk today was, like I said, perfect. And I've come to realize that what I struggle with is really schedule, which is different than time. And I'm starting to appreciate, but it's so ineffable, that we really are time.
Yeah.
We are the universe. And if we are the universe, and it fits so well into the talk that Flint's been giving, that it's not, how does it go? I'm not it, but it's me.
Yeah.
To me, that all fits together. And so when we were reading yesterday, that we were reading a part that said, so we struggle because we get stuck in this particularity of self, right?
Yeah.
We struggle with the question, how were we created? What's the nature of our creation? And it occurred to me, it's the wrong question. And that was very profound. Because, so many great thinkers, people spend their lives struggling with that question. And yet in this, taking from the perspective of, I'm not it, it's me. It seems to me that it's the wrong question. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you at all, and if you would comment on that.
Well, firstly, I think it's easy to kind of get sidelined by a question you're not interested in.
Okay.
It's really, I think one of the big things for me was getting really interested in, what am I really interested in? What are my questions? And I really appreciate your discovery of actually that's not the question I'm following.
Okay.
And I think that's central really to kind of learning about our path and ourselves.
Okay.
I sometimes when I first started practicing Zen, I thought, I ought to know this. I ought to be interested in this koan, and I realized there are so many teachings that it's finding the ones that actually, the questions that are for you.
Okay.
Even if you're in a group that's studying something a little bit close, if it's just off your question, that's not your question.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Well, first of all, as you started to say that, I realized the duality in my statement. Right and wrong is the wrong question. And so it's not the question for me, is what I hear you saying. It may be the question for someone else. It may be touching the very, lively, and I mean livelihood,
Yes.
for someone else. And so that's very helpful. And so I think what you said about finding your questions, but that's important. And also noting that this is not the right question. This is not my question. That's
Yes.
equally important.
Yes. Yeah.
That's equally important because
Yeah.
it offers direction, I suppose. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
I think finding our question is maybe one of the most important things that we can do in life and our practice. And finding our question within all the teachings is really central to our practice. Somebody said, I forget which teacher it was, if you go into a pharmacy, there's hundreds of drugs, but there's only one or two that actually you need. Thousands of teachings.
right.
It's kind of picking the ones that, what really interests you? What do you want to talk about?
Right.
And I think, yeah.
Does that make sense to you, what I said about my realization that it's really schedule that I struggle with?
Yes.
Okay.
Me too.
So,
I think one of the reasons that I turn towards being time, Uji with Dogen, is my own kind of issues around time, use of time, and being in time, and my own busyness. So it's something about the question around the schedule is sometimes it's really helpful to have a schedule, but how do we relate to it? I think for me.
And I'm just smiling because it was such a wonderful discovery for me this morning that we're both studying. I mean, we're both really immersing ourselves in this question of time at the same time. And I just, there's a kind of resonance that I really appreciate about that. So thank you.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think, in this society where time is expressed in such a linear way,
Right.
It's really such a relief to go deeper into a different realization about time.
Right. Yeah. And it leads us to finding those beads on our necklace.
It does. It does. Yes.
It present in the moment. Yeah.
I really resonate with your schedule thing. Yeah. And so
I've been thinking about how I'm gonna lead the meditation tomorrow, and that was actually part of what I was gonna say. And and I haven't unfolded it all yet, but it was like, oh wow, Josh is thinking about this too. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if what we teach or what we express is actually we're talking to ourselves a lot of the time. I've been talking to myself this morning.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, yeah. Thank you for that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you, Kathy.
Good to see you too.
See you later.
Yeah.
I think we maybe have time for just one more, if there is one. Rosemary.
Okay.
Um, Okay. Good morning. I'm trying to get my picture. Okay,
Oh,
good morning.
hi,
Good morning, Josh.
hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to
And
meet you.
yes, and I first wanted two things to thank you for sharing your immersion in nature in Cornwall, at Cornwall, in Cornwall, and how it, yeah, just that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very beautiful and moving, and to have you share your experience with your practice and nature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it-
It's
yeah,
nice to feel that kinship with you, with nature and practice.
yeah. I find when I am practicing those images, and I live in the city, and but I love nature and I love the ocean. I find that those images, particularly of the ocean and the flow of the waves in and out, are very, very helpful for me to focus on my breath,
Yeah.
which is a very similar in and out
Lovely.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing that I'm very grateful for is your appreciating and bringing into your experience at the retreat in Switzerland, the environment. As I'm very new to practice, and actually I started practicing during the pandemic, so it's all been through Zoom, my relational part. And in the beginning of Zoom with other groups, I found myself staging my background. And once I started practicing, I thought, no, that's part of the self-centered dream. I shouldn't do that. So last night when Efrat was commenting and appreciating the environment that Flint creates, and you're also bringing into practice the whole gestalt of what you're experiencing, including the environment. It was, between Efrat and you, I really appreciate that kind of perspective.
Yeah. I love that. I love the kind of appreciation you have for your environment, and actually the openness to start including it. It's all in the piece. It's all in the big picture. And Edward really pointed to that yesterday, the way that Flint is embodying the teachings and the totality that he creates in that small picture for us to appreciate. Yeah.
I mean, it's beauty, and that's inside and outside, I guess.
It's very easy to get hooked on the words that are being said, and to pay attention in a broader way to the total piece.
Yes, I like that. That's very helpful. It's very, very helpful. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you. I've seen you before on screen, and it's great to meet you personally.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.